Hello, teachers. Welcome back to Teachers Help Teachers. Today's episode, we have Amanda Campos from Los Angeles. Thank you, Amanda, for being here.
Thank you.
Amanda is a teacher. She's taught school for 8 years, teaching preschool students all the way up to middle school, then moving on to college students. So Amanda has a wealth of experiences throughout all ages. And during this presentation, that's going to be an important part of that little fact about Amanda. Wow, that's terrific. And then she recently earned a master's degree in educational psychology, learning and cognition. And she's been coding, or rather, she's had her students code the last 6 years. She co-founded the robotics club at her school, taking those students, those coding athletes, to competition for 3 years. She is working on her STEAM certification at her local district. And I just want to say, I know Amanda personally. She's one of the hardest working people that I know. And she's not only hardworking, she's brilliant, intelligent, and you're going to see why in a short while. Amanda is going to talk to us about coding and its wonderful benefits and implications in student learning. So Amanda Campos, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So Amanda, like I mentioned earlier, you co-founded the coding program at your local school. Will you tell us, though, before we get into it further, what coding is?
Yeah, absolutely. So coding is a process. It's using programming language to essentially get the computer to behave in a certain way, a way that you want. So students write a line of code, a single line, and that typically will present a specific behavior that they want it to achieve. And then coding collectively, so adding all those lines of code together, creates script. And that script is how the computer will behave as a collective organization. So if you're trying to get it to do a very elaborate thing, you'll need several lines of code. And so students learn those things as well.
Wow, that's terrific. And so on that note, you like I mentioned also, you earned your master's degree, and you found some very interesting outcomes. So will you share with us what you learned and linking that to coding?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to share my presentation with you. So essentially, um, I found that we find in research that students lose engagement in mathematics when they hit middle school. And they tend to have a negative feelings and attitude about mathematics in general, specifically when they hit middle school. But they find that in elementary school, students still have a very positive relationship with math.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were trying to figure out what's happening, right? Like what is causing this super negative shift. It's not even that they feel like a little bit, underwhelmed or a little bit negative towards it. They full on go from feeling positive about mathematics in the 4th and 5th grade to 6th, 7th, and 8th hitting and having really negative attitudes.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked with a Purpose grant in Florida, which is a restorative justice program. And I was able to conduct a study during 6 weeks of a summer school. It's a freedom school, so they essentially teach culturally relevant pedagogy during that time. And I taught Scratch, which is a coding program developed out of MIT. It's free. You just need you sign in for an account and it will save your information. If you use it and you don't sign up for an account, it just essentially doesn't save your information. And Scratch specifically uses transformation geometry to code. So it
Mhm.
uses mathematics to code. And I wanted to see if using that type of program would shift students' attitudes about math and if they would feel more positively about it.
Mm.
So if you were to go into Scratch, this is essentially what you would see. This top picture is the entire screen that students see. We call this the little scratch pad. It's how their character will actually move.
Yes.
In the middle, it's all the blocks. So this is a visual block coding program. Not all of them are like this, but this one in particular is. And if you pulled out, so students pull these blocks out and create these lines of code that create a script. So there's tons of geometry and algebra in it, but the students don't always see that. So to point some of those out, we have if-then statements. So if touching the color green, then, and then these are the things that will happen during that time.
Mhm.
We have rotations. The students can change the degrees the character's moving.
Mhm.
We also have degrees, direction, time. So they put in exactly how much time their things are moving.
Mm.
And then the whole thing works off of X and Y coordinates. And
Mhm.
students are able to change. That's how they get them to move, essentially, is they're moving on an X and Y plane.
I mean, look at all these, multi-tier math vocabulary words just on this one screen. That's pretty impressive. My
Yeah.
question to you is, I mean, I'm just looking at this and I'm familiar with code or coding,
Hmm.
but it's very overwhelming.
Yes.
My question to you is do we start with, do students start with an intro and then build up to something like this on Scratch?
Yeah. So
Mhm.
essentially, teachers can use it however in the platform, however they wish. So typically, I would start with very, very basic things just to get students in understanding what the different blocks do.
Mhm.
So I will ask them, I present it in a way that they get a challenge question. So one of the challenge questions could be, make your character move in a circle,
Mhm.
or have your character make a complete square with using degrees.
Mhm.
Different things like that. So they would become more familiar. This, I agree, is extremely advanced. And they wouldn't be doing things like this initially.
Yeah.
They would really be learning the basics first.
Yes.
But it definitely has I like this picture because it gives you the freedom to see that there are so many opportunities to teach all of this. But I agree, absolutely. Students need to start at a much more basic level. I also will point out that if you're using Scratch, um, they call it remixing.
Mhm.
Um, they really tried to, a side note, they really tried to cater to students when they developed this entire program.
Mhm.
So scratch, meaning that it's from like DJ scratching. You're changing things up. Um, and then they call it remixing. If you take you can publish your project. So this is a published project that I pulled, but you can remix the project by pulling somebody else's project and changing up the code. So it will provide you the code
Oh.
that the student published, and then they're able to go in and remix or change up the code. And that's also a great introductory because then students can see the code and how the character is behaving. And then if they want it to do something different, they can remix just a certain piece of
Look at these nerds being so cool.
it. Right?
Yeah. Go MIT nerds.
Right?
I love it. And that goes into, or rather, it touches upon collaboration, right?
Hmm.
A bit of
Yep.
that, where hey, this is what I, like code remix battle. This is what I have.
Yep.
What can you do? Right, right,
Yeah. And
right.
creativity, because then students can see like who remixed their code and how that works. And
Right.
it gives students the opportunity to, if perhaps their class isn't as into it, or their class isn't as, eager to do that, they can collaborate with so many people around the world. I believe that
Wow.
Scratch has been translated into 70 different languages at this point.
Mhm.
So it's a worldwide free still coding program.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Amanda, you and I are going to nerd out right now because TPACK, right? I mean, this is
Yes.
definitely, she'll get into what TPACK is, but and I'm currently learning more about that, but there's definitely this 21st century learning happening
Yep.
just in what you're presenting so far. Yeah,
Thanks.
with content pedagogy and technology, linking people all over the world with with yourself, right?
Hmm.
That's
Yep.
awesome. So what else? What's the next slide? Yeah.
So this is my personal research. So I did 6 weeks of teaching with a curriculum that I had taken and um, created
Hmm.
for students. So I was going to see these students 2 days a week for 60-minute sessions. I had initially, when I started, the boys and the girls were mixed the first week. And then the second week, because of other camp activities, the boys and the girls were separated. And so I started seeing them, just the boys and then just the girls. And the intervention initially, the first 3 weeks were the same. So I provided the students a challenge. Like I had mentioned before, making a rotation of your sprite. They call it, the little character on this program is called the sprite, or having your sprite go through like a square or make a shape, things like that. And then they were working on a larger project, and the larger project was create 3 different backgrounds and code them that tell a story about you. So it was very personal. So after their challenge, which would take about 30 minutes, they would work on their projects. And what I found was that the boys were very interested and very eager, and the girls simply were not. They had no interest in doing the challenges. They had no interest in creating this project. They were some of them created projects, and they were so minimal. And when I asked guiding questions to try and get them to really open it up and to add, they simply didn't want to. They truly just sat and did not want to do it. And so I had to change the intervention. I had to change up the research. So in about the end of week 3, I sat down with the girls, and we had a very open conversation. I discussed why I thought coding was important, how it felt to me, how it could relate to their lives. I also asked them questions about curriculum and how they felt in their math classes, and what they were learning. And a lot of them said that they felt like their teachers were the show, and that they didn't feel comfortable asking questions to their teachers, and they didn't really see the relevance of some of the things that they were learning. And it really opened up this whole conversation. So the actual intervention in my research was to change the instruction for the girls, and it was a lot more guided.
Uh-huh.
So I put up a project. So if you can see this project, in the code, they're trying to get the sprite to the end of the maze.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it does look initially very complicated, but it gave the girls a common project to work on
Hmm.
along with myself. So I put this up on the board, something I hadn't done at this point. At this point, they were all working on their individual computers. Um, so I put the project up on the board, and I worked step by step with the students to figure out, like, how are we going to get this sprite to move up? How are we going to get it to move this way? And really these open-ended questions. And then they started working together to try and really get this project going. And so it
Uh-huh.
gave them all this like common project of, well, what are you doing? And that collaboration, as you talked about. Um,
And that's, just to comment on the attitudes that you saw between the girls and the boys, and the difference, in being open to that. I know you're an amazing teacher, but that just really illustrates the point that yes, you had this pre-planned lesson ready to present, but you realize your audience was, they were at different places. One class of boys were at a different place than another class of girls. And
mhm,
what really spoke to me as you were talking, was the part where you you saw where they were, but especially with the girls, where you met them where they were at, and you gave them what they needed, but you started to plant these seeds of being a problem solver, being collaborative, being a collaborative worker,
mhm.
getting excited about solving this problem, right? And then giving that confidence of, my gosh, if I can do something like this that I thought was difficult, and I
Mhm.
was open to it and I did it, then yes, I could see how they could transfer that can do attitude in a difficult subject such as math, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's even a misconception. Math isn't difficult, but as long as with the right instruction and the right, can do attitude, they can do it. Anybody
Yes.
can do it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really felt like like going back to what you said, I had to take the researcher hat off for a moment, and
Mhm.
because typically in research you use a pre-plan and you go in and you stick with that plan, because if you change things like I did, it it changes the variation of like what results you could get.
Yes.
And I was willing to take that chance because for so many reasons. One, because that's what you do as a teacher, right? That's those are the shifts that we make on a daily basis. But two, because I truly couldn't leave this group of kids and feel like, keep going. Let me push through something that I know you're not happy. I know you're not learning. And it really was, how do we find this problem? So
Mhm.
to kind of wrap this up in terms of my findings.
Mhm.
So before this had initially started, the very, very first thing we did was I provided them a test. It was not a test, that's not the right word, a series of questions about their attitudes about mathematics. Um, what they were interested in math, how they felt about it, how they felt about geometry versus algebra, and all those things. And then I provided them the same test afterwards. And what I found in both genders was that there was a positive shift, regardless of their prior test. They all had a significant positive shift in their attitudes about math. And so that's really what the importance of it is that we have to cater our instruction to students in the classroom. Curriculum does need to be more individualized, and that females as a whole are still underrepresented populations in these majors and these careers. And perhaps it needs to be these shifts in curriculum to kind of stop that from happening constantly, and so that we can continue to see positive shifts in attitudes regularly.
Amanda, before you move on, I want to share something, just a personal example. So I code with my students. I've been coding, I think, as long as you have
Hmm.
with your students, only because I think we heard about coding at the same time.
Yeah.
But I teach first grade, right?
Right.
So for the last 5-6 years, um, I coding was a weekly thing throughout the year for my first graders. And I have to say um, that my best coders, like this year, are many of them are my girls. And
Hmm.
so I hope that just even giving them that experience early on, um, at the start, will helped shift those negative attitudes towards mathematics and coding and science.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. That's so great to hear. I'm going to wrap this up with TPACK. So I'm going to share, um, we can nerd out together. I love this visual of TPACK. So TPACK is a educational theory out of Michigan. It's a few different researchers, but specifically Kohler in specific.
Mhm.
Um, and TPACK is technology, pedagogy, content knowledge. It's all the things put together. Um,
Mhm.
so we've got technological knowledge, so understanding how to use technology just as an individual.
Yeah.
We have content knowledge as
Mm.
teachers, so different subjects, right? Content. And then pedagogical knowledge of how the best practices are to teach those. And as you and I were talking about this, earlier in the day, we were talking about that a lot of the teachers just end up in these little pockets where they're sharing just one or two of these components. So maybe you have the content of coding and you're using the computer to have them code, but
Yes.
that's it. There's no instruction going on. There's no
Mm.
anything else. It really is just, well, here's the content and here's the technology piece, or here's the technology and I know how to teach it, but now I'm not giving you the content that you need.
Mm.
So maybe it's not specified enough to the content that you need. And so TPACK really meets in this little middle section, and it's using all three components in order to teach. So using what you know pedagogically,
Mhm.
knowing the content, and then using the technology knowledge as well to complete it. I think we talk about this a lot, is having our students choose the right technology to accomplish certain tasks. But a
Yes.
lot of the time, that's on us as well as teachers, is that once they get past, what should they use, it's really up to us to provide that as well.
Yes. And let's go back to this and coding. So
Yes.
Amanda, you told us you presented TPAC to us, and immediately I was thinking, okay, what do I do to like know how to code? Because I need to know that technological aspect too.
Yeah.
So, would you recommend that teachers use Scratch Junior like a student would, so that they're familiar and then therefore um, assign appropriate assignments and lessons, so that they can incorporate TPAC to the fullest? Like, how can teachers start? Um, where do teachers start with coding
I
for
think it
themselves?
depends on your comfort level. So I'm unfortunately one of those people that jump in head first and learn with them. So
Yeah.
when I initially used code.org and when I initially used Scratch, I added it on the iPad and I said, let's go. And I didn't have all these pieces figured out. So I was kind of, we have a famous expression of flying the plane while it's building it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes that's the style that works for me, but some people really need to understand what they're going to get their students into, and in that case, absolutely. Most of these programs are free, so sign up, play with it, ask around. Code.org has some wonderful uh, professional developments that are really easy. They're not very long.
Okay.
Um, and most of these now have YouTube videos and little things. So even if you're learning these little tricks, I absolutely agree. Especially with younger students, you really need to figure out, like, what do I want them to do?
Yeah.
And I do encourage, creating these little challenges and tasks, because even if you don't know how to do it, they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So ask that, create these little challenge of the day, and
Yeah.
then kind of let them explore and see what comes out of it. That would be my best
Awesome. Will you
advice.
bring us, thank you, Amanda. Will you bring us back to our
Yes,
side by side? Thank you. So, Amanda, you shared with us your findings about the importance of coding, because it can enhance and encourage and positively influence such negative attitudes, especially among our girls, um, when it comes to subjects like math and science. And
Hmm.
I'm so glad you brought that to light. And for us, let's take Amanda's advice and explore coding. So I will post a link to code.org and Scratch, and we'll dig in, as you know, we're here stuck at home. um, so Amanda Campos, thank you so much for being here and helping us understand coding. Thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
thank you. And thank you, teachers, for joining me on Teachers Help Teachers. And I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.